My stepdaughter slammed the door in my face and called me a nobody. I looked to my wife for backup, but she just said, she's going through a phase. That evening, I took off my ring, left it on the counter, and stepped out of their lives. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to Philip John from Alabama. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I used to think love could fix anything. That if you gave enough, showed up enough, proved yourself in enough quiet ways, eventually you'd be seen, respected. I was wrong. My name is Michael Halbert. I'm 42, and for the last 3 years, I was married to Julia. She came with a daughter, Tessa, who was 14 when we met. I remember thinking how young she was to be carrying so much anger in her eyes, but I chalked it up to teen angst and the mess of a divorce. I believed, naively, that with patience and consistency, I could be a steady presence. I was wrong about that too. In the beginning, Julia and I were solid. She was warm, funny, intelligent. Had this way of making you feel like you were the only one in the room. I fell for her faster than I ever had with anyone else. After a year of dating, we got married in a small ceremony, just a few close friends and family. Tessa stood stiffly in a lavender dress, her lips pressed into a tight line. She didn't smile once, not even in the photos. Julia told me to give it time. She's just adjusting, she said. But weeks turned into months, and months into years, and Tessa never adjusted. If anything, she grew colder. At home, I was the ghost in the corner, present, but not acknowledged. I paid the bills, fixed the leaking pipes, made dinner when Julia had to work late, but somehow, I was always the outsider. Tessa would walk past me like I was a coat rack. No, good morning. No, thanks for the ride. Not even a glance. When I tried to connect, offered to help with homework, suggested movie nights, asked about her interests, she met me with sighs, eye rolls, and silence. Julia brushed it off. She doesn't hate you. She just doesn't know how to talk to men yet, she'd say. Her father's not exactly a role model. But that explanation wore thin over time. I started feeling like a guest in my own home. Worse than that, a tolerated inconvenience. It's strange how little things can chip away at you. Like the way they'd make dinner plans without me, or how Julia would let Tessa insult me in passive-aggressive jabs and never correct her. Once, Tessa told a friend on speakerphone, right in front of me, "He's just this dude my mom married. Like, I don't even know why he's here." I waited for Julia to say something, anything, but she just kept chopping vegetables like she hadn't heard a thing. The breaking point came on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday. I had come home early and cooked dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread. I set the table, even lit a damn candle, thinking maybe, just maybe, we could have a quiet night together. Julia came in looking tired, but smiled when she saw the setup. "You're sweet," she said, kissing my cheek. I almost felt hopeful again. Then Tessa walked in, saw the table, and groaned. "Ugh, are we doing this lame family dinner thing again?" she muttered. I stayed calm. "I thought it'd be nice," I said. She scoffed, grabbed a plate, and started piling food like she was serving herself at a cafeteria. I asked her to wait so we could eat together. That's when she snapped. "You're not my dad. You're not even anyone important. You're just some nobody my mom married because she was lonely. So stop pretending like this is your house." The plate clattered onto the table as silence filled the room. I looked at Julia, stunned, waiting, pleading, really, for her to say something. To defend me, to put her daughter in check. But all she did was let out a tired sigh and mutter, "She's going through a phase." Just like that. Like it was normal for a teenager to talk to an adult like that, to humiliate the man paying for the roof over her head. I stood there, heart pounding in my ears, the warmth draining from my body like someone had turned off the sun. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, turned, and walked upstairs. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I packed a small overnight bag, just enough clothes for a few days. My hands were steady as I slid off my wedding ring and placed it on the marble counter beside the fruit bowl. It looked so small there. Insignificant. Just a band of metal. But it held 3 years of sacrifice, silence, and slow erasure. When I walked out the front door, no one followed me. No one asked where I was going. I remember standing outside, keys in hand, the cool night air brushing against my face. For a moment, I hesitated. There was still a part of me, some stubborn thread, that hoped Julia would come running out, realize what just happened, beg me not to leave. But the door stayed shut. I wasn't leaving a home. I was escaping a performance where I was always the understudy, never the lead. That night, I checked into a modest hotel near the outskirts of town. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until the sun rose, thinking about every moment I let slide, every insult I absorbed, every time I convinced myself that things would get better. They never did, because I wasn't part of that family. I was a placeholder, a financial cushion, a warm body to fill a void. And for the first time in years, I realized I deserved more than that. I didn't go back the next day, or the day after that. In fact, I didn't even respond to Julia's one text that came in 18 hours later. "Where are you?" That was all it said. No follow-up, no call, no concern beyond the mild confusion of a woman who had lost track of her husband like she might misplace a houseplant. I stared at it for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen, then locked the phone and dropped it on the nightstand like it burned. That text told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't a man she missed. I was a utility she noticed had gone quiet. 2 days later, I made it official. I contacted my bank and froze the joint card she had access to. Then I called the property management company and informed them I would no longer be paying rent for the unit under my name starting the end of the month. My name was on the lease, but I made it clear I wouldn't be renewing or covering a cent beyond the current billing cycle. The girl on the phone said, "You know this could affect their housing security, right?" I told her yes. I knew exactly what I was doing. For years, I paid for a home I wasn't emotionally welcome in. I wasn't going to subsidize my own erasure anymore. Next came the phone bill. Our shared plan had 3 lines. Mine, Julia's, and Tessa's. I kept mine. Theirs went dark by the following morning. I imagined the moment Julia realized her phone wasn't working, probably mid-conversation, maybe trying to order takeout or scrolling Instagram. I wondered if she thought it was a service outage or if the reality sank in right away. That her husband had not just left, but unplugged. There's something liberating in that kind of clarity, when love dries up and logic takes the wheel. I moved into a temporary rental the following week. Small place, 1 bedroom, but clean and quiet. It had a little balcony where I could drink my coffee in peace, watch the cars go by, and feel the silence settle into my bones like a warm coat. I hadn't realized how heavy my old life was until I took it off. Julia didn't call again. Tessa certainly didn't. It was like I'd been erased, but unlike before, I welcomed it. This time, invisibility was my choice. Still, in the quiet moments, I found myself revisiting memories like bruises I couldn't stop pressing. The time I spent 3 hours assembling a new desk for Tessa's room, only to have her say it was too ugly and demand Julia take her shopping for another. The birthday dinner I arranged for Julia. Reservations at her favorite spot, wine she loved, music she mentioned once offhand. But she spent the night on her phone, distracted, while Tessa texted her nonstop from home about a missing hair straightener. Every time I tried to create a moment, I was reminded that I didn't belong in theirs. The part that haunted me most wasn't Tessa's cruelty, it was Julia's silence. The passive acceptance of my humiliation. She could have told her daughter to stop. She could have drawn a line, made it clear that kindness and respect weren't optional. But she didn't. And that silence, to me, was betrayal in its most intimate form. You expect enemies to wound you. You don't expect the people you love to just stand there and watch. A week after I left, I ran into a friend of ours, David, someone I met through Julia's circle. He looked surprised to see me alone, then uneasy when I explained I had moved out. "Damn," he said. "I had no idea things were that bad." I told him they weren't, not outwardly. That was the trick. Our marriage didn't explode, it evaporated. "Well," he added, "Julia always said you were too sensitive. Maybe this is for the best." I nodded, but inside, something twisted. Too sensitive. That was her favorite phrase when I brought up feeling unappreciated. That I was too soft. That I should be more understanding. As if wanting basic respect made me weak. 2 weeks in, I finally unboxed the wedding photos. They'd been sitting in a suitcase untouched. I laid them out on the floor, photo after photo of us smiling, laughing, posing like a family. I studied my own face in those frames. I looked happy, genuinely. But now I understood it wasn't real happiness. It was hope. And hope, I've learned, can be the cruelest emotion. It keeps you anchored in places you should have abandoned long ago. I didn't burn the photos. That would have felt dramatic, childish. Instead, I packed them into a new box, labeled it Closed Chapters, and slid it to the back of my closet. I didn't need to destroy the past. I just needed it to stop holding me hostage. By the end of the month, their world began to unravel. I didn't see it firsthand, but I heard bits and pieces through the grapevine. Julia tried to get the rent extension denied. Her paycheck alone couldn't cover the full cost, not after years of counting on mine. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday. By Friday, they were out. No more house, no more landline, no more comfortable suburban illusion. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel triumphant. But I didn't feel guilty either. I had simply stopped giving what they never valued. The night after I got confirmation they were gone, I stood on my balcony, sipping whiskey, the city lights humming like a low lullaby. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who stayed, hoped, compromised. And I thought about the man I was becoming. Not harder, necessarily. Just quieter, clearer. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. There's a peace that comes with finality, like the closing click of a door that will never open again. And the ring? I never picked it back up. As far as I know, it's still there, resting on that cold marble counter, forgotten amid the chaos they never saw coming. They say silence can be deafening, but in my case, it was more like a bomb, soothing, expansive, and long overdue. The first few weeks after the eviction, I didn't seek out any updates. I didn't stalk social media or call mutual friends fishing for gossip. I simply lived, woke up in my own bed, brewed my own coffee, left dishes in the sink if I damn well felt like it. I went to work, came home, and for the first time in years, my life felt like it belonged to me. No background tension, no emotional eggshells, just peace, unadorned and unapologetic. But peace, as I learned, has its own kind of echo. Sometimes it sounds like a memory knocking at the door when you least expect it. A commercial for some show Tessa used to binge would come on, and I'd remember her hogging the living room TV with her headphones half on, scrolling on her phone as she watched. Or I'd pass the park down the street where Julia and I once sat on a bench eating greasy tacos from a food truck, laughing at how bad our Spanish was. The laughter in those memories was real. The love, at least on my end, was real too. But love isn't always enough when respect goes missing. It wasn't until the third week that the messages began. Not from Julia, not directly. She must have burned through her options, because suddenly friends I hadn't heard from in months were reaching out, pretending to check in. Hey man, just thinking about you, how've you been? One even said, Julia mentioned you moved out. That's crazy. She's been going through it. The tone was always casual on the surface, but you could feel the fishing line beneath it, tugging gently, trying to reel me back into the drama I'd swum away from. I kept my responses polite but brief. I wasn't angry. I was disinterested. And that, I realized, was worse for them. Anger they could argue with. Indifference left them powerless. A few days later, I finally got the first message from Julia. It came as an email. Subject line blank, just her name in my inbox like a quiet footstep behind me. I stared at it for almost 10 minutes before opening it. It wasn't long. She said she understood if I never wanted to talk to her again, but that she was sorry. Not for what she let Tessa say or for the years of erasure. No, the apology was vague, an umbrella term for pain without specifics. I didn't realize how much I was taking you for granted. I thought you'd always be there. I see now how wrong I was. It ended with, please, can we talk? I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have things to say, but because she hadn't said enough. Sorry is easy when you've lost something. Sorry is cheap when it's laced with desperation. What I needed, what I still hadn't gotten, was accountability. Not just for how she treated me, but for what she allowed her daughter to become under her watch. For letting a girl who once needed guidance turn into someone who wielded disdain like a sword, and for standing idly by while I bled. Still, a part of me couldn't help but wonder what their life looked like now. I imagined them in a cramped apartment or maybe sleeping at Julia's sister's place, living out of boxes, piecing together a routine without the man who'd made their life so stable. It wasn't that I wished them misery, I just hoped the discomfort taught them something. That maybe, In the quiet of their own fallout, they'd hear the echo of everything I'd tried to say over the years. About a week later, I saw them. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I'd gone to the local strip mall to pick up groceries and some light bulbs. As I walked out of the store, I spotted Julia and Tessa across the parking lot. They looked smaller, not just physically, but in presence. Julia's hair was tied up in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes, wearing a hoodie I recognized as mine from years ago. Tessa had earbuds in, arms crossed, wearing a scowl like it was armor. They didn't see me, and I didn't approach. I stood there for a few seconds, watching them argue quietly near a bus stop. No car, no ease, just tension and fatigue hanging off their shoulders like wet clothes. It hit me then, not joy, not pity, just finality. That life was no longer mine to fix or carry. That night, I finally allowed myself to open a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. I poured a glass, sat on my balcony, and toasted to the quiet, to my own damn company, to the peace that comes not from solitude, but from the absence of people who never saw your worth. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just breathed, and for the first time in a long while, that was enough. A few days later, the emails started coming more frequently. Julia wrote that Tessa was refusing to go to school, that the stress of losing the house had made her even more defiant. She said she missed me, not just my presence, but the steadiness I brought. "You were the glue, Michael," she wrote, "and we fell apart without you." I read that line twice, then again. It was probably the most honest thing she'd ever said to me, but I wasn't glue anymore. I wasn't anything to them. I had spent years patching cracks, smoothing over fractures, stretching myself thin to keep their lives held together. But glue breaks down too, especially when no one cares enough to reinforce the structure. I didn't reply to that email either. I archived it, closed my laptop, and went for a walk. Outside, the air smelled of summer turning into fall, warmth fading, leaves crisping at the edges. Change was in the air, real and irreversible. I walked for miles without thinking, without needing to arrive anywhere. I had already arrived. And behind me, the house I left behind echoed with emptiness I no longer needed to fill. It happened on a Wednesday, middle of the week, ordinary in every other way. I was at work, halfway through reviewing a site survey, when my assistant buzzed my office line and said, "There's a woman here asking to see you. Says it's urgent." The way she said a woman gave it away. I knew before I looked up. I knew it wasn't a client or a colleague or some random visitor. I knew it was her. Julia. I took a breath, closed the file, and told her to send her in. She walked in hesitantly, like she wasn't sure if she'd made the right choice, like the carpet might collapse beneath her if she moved too fast. She looked thinner, paler, like someone who hadn't had a full night's sleep in weeks. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time in a long time, there was no trace of indifference or distance. Just sorrow, raw and unvarnished. I leaned back in my chair, arms folded, waiting for her to speak. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, voice cracking right at the start. "You wouldn't answer my emails or texts, and I don't blame you. I needed to see you, face to face." I nodded slowly, still silent. I didn't know her anything, not my voice, not my comfort. But I wasn't cruel. I waited. I lost the apartment. We stayed with my sister for a while, but she has 3 kids and no space. Tessa's been unbearable. She blames me, blames everyone. She's failing school, she barely speaks to me, and she broke off, wiped at her eyes. I don't know what to do. I'm drowning, Michael. Still, I said nothing. I wanted her to sit in it, to feel the silence she used to weaponize against me. She stepped closer. "I know I failed you. I know I let you down in every way that mattered. I should have defended you. I should have taught Tessa how to treat you with respect. I should have been your partner, not just someone who stood beside you while you handled everything alone. I didn't realize how much you were holding until you stopped." That last part hit harder than I expected, because it was true. I had been holding all of it, the finances, the emotional weight, the tension between them that no one wanted to name. I had carried our household like a pack mule while they enjoyed the view. And when I finally buckled, all they could say was, "She's going through a phase." She reached into her bag and pulled something out, a small, familiar box, the kind jewelers use. She set it gently on my desk and opened it. Inside was my wedding ring. "I found it on the counter after you left," she said softly. I kept it. I didn't know why at the time. Maybe I thought you'd come back for it. I looked at the ring. It hadn't changed. Still smooth, still silver, still meaningless. I didn't touch it. What do you want, Julia? I asked finally, my voice low but steady. She swallowed hard. I want another chance. I want to make things right. I want to show you I've changed. That I understand now. I nodded again, slowly, deliberately. Then I asked the one question I'd been carrying since the night I left. Would you still be here, asking for a second chance, if you hadn't lost the house? If the money hadn't stopped? If things had stayed easy? She blinked, taken aback. What? I leaned forward. Would you be here right now if your life hadn't fallen apart? She hesitated. Not just a pause, this was deeper. A crack in the floorboards of her soul. Her eyes welled up again, and she whispered, I don't know. And there it was. The answer I needed. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the city for a long moment before turning back to her. You don't know. That's the problem. You didn't come here because you love me. You came here because your safety net vanished, and suddenly, the man you dismissed looks a lot like a lifeline. That's not love, Julia. That's desperation. I did love you, she whispered. I still do. I didn't flinch. Then you should have acted like it when it mattered. When I was standing in front of you asking for help, begging for respect. You should have told your daughter to sit down and show some damn decency, instead of brushing it off. But you didn't. And I don't trust people who can only see clearly once the lights go out. She reached across the desk, but I stepped back. No, I said firmly. This isn't a movie. There's no dramatic reunion, no swelling music, no slow fade to black. There's just me, standing here, finally choosing myself. She nodded, tears streaming freely now. I understand. I hope you do. She left without another word, her heels clicking softly against the tile. I watched her go, watched the door close. And then I sat back down, looked at the ring still sitting open on my desk, and slid the box back toward the edge. Later that day, I tossed it in the trash. It didn't even feel symbolic. It felt overdue. I went home that evening, took off my shoes, poured myself a drink, and didn't feel sadness, or regret, or even relief. I just felt me. Alone, yes, but whole. And I realized that all along, I wasn't trying to save my marriage. I was trying to save myself from the truth I didn't want to face. I had built a life around people who never intended to hold me the way I held them. And now, finally, I'd let go. I never expected to hear from Tessa again. Not directly, at least. The last words she'd spoken to me were a venomous dismissal, and I took her at her word. She made it clear I was nothing to her, and once I walked out that door, I promised myself I would never beg anyone, not even a teenage girl, for a place in a life where I was only ever background noise. So when her name popped up in my email inbox, plain as daylight, I stared at it like it was a trick of the screen. A glitch. Maybe a spam bot with her name. But no, it was her. The subject line was just, "Hi." The message itself wasn't long, but it had weight. It wasn't polished or overly emotional. It read like someone struggling with the mechanics of truth. I know I don't deserve your time, but I need to say this. You were never a nobody. I was angry, and I took it out on you because you were there. That wasn't fair. I'm sorry. No salutation. No sign-off. Just that. A sentence carved from guilt, delivered like a stone dropped in a still pond. I reread it twice, then 3 more times, looking for sarcasm and sincerity, anything to justify ignoring it. But I didn't find it. And that was the most surprising part. It felt real, honest, uncomfortably so. I didn't respond right away. I let a few days pass, not out of malice, but because I needed to sit with it, to understand what I was feeling. There was no joy in her apology, no vindication, just a faint ache, the kind you feel when someone touches a bruise you forgot was there. Eventually, I replied, I appreciate your message. I'm open to talking, but I think it should be in person. I gave her a time and place, a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town, neutral ground, public but not crowded. She agreed. She showed up 5 minutes late, hoodie pulled over her head, earbuds still in. When she spotted me, she hesitated for a second, then walked over. No hug, no small talk, just a quiet, awkward slide into the chair across from me. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I didn't think you'd answer, she finally said. eyes darting to the table. I wasn't sure I would, I replied. But I figured if you had the courage to say something, I should have the courage to hear it. She nodded slowly. Fair. There was another pause before she looked up, and for the first time in years, I didn't see defiance in her expression. No sarcasm. Just a girl, wounded, angry, tired. I was awful to you, she said. I know that now. I didn't soften. I didn't jump in to reassure her. I waited. I thought you were trying to replace my dad, she continued. Even though he barely called and never showed up, he was still my dad. And you just came in and did everything he never did. You were nice. Too nice. And I hated that it made me feel like maybe I'd been wrong about what a dad was supposed to be. That caught me off guard. I hadn't expected that kind of insight. Not from the girl who used to slam doors and throw words like knives. I let her keep talking. I think I made you the enemy because you were the only one who stuck around. And because Mom never told me I was out of line, I thought I could get away with it. So I did. I let out a slow breath. That's probably the most honest thing anyone said to me in a long time. She looked down again, cheeks red. It doesn't fix anything. I know that. No, it doesn't, I said gently. But it matters. A lot. She looked up, surprised. Accountability matters, I added. You're not a kid anymore, Tessa. You're old enough to know the damage words can do. You wanted to hurt me, and you did. And now, you're owning that. That takes more guts than most adults I know. She swallowed hard, blinked fast like she was holding back tears. I miss you. That one sat between us for a moment, heavier than anything else she'd said. I leaned back in my chair. I miss the version of us that could have been. I really tried to be someone you could rely on. I didn't need you to call me Dad. I just wanted to be treated like a human being. I see that now, she whispered. I was too busy being angry to notice. We sat in silence again, sipping our drinks. She looked like she wanted to ask something, but didn't. I let her sit with it. I'm not coming back, I said after a while. Not to that house. Not to that dynamic. That chapter is closed. I figured, she said, her voice small. But I'm open to rebuilding something new. If you want to reach out, if you need someone to talk to, not a father, but maybe just a decent adult, you can. That's on you. She nodded, eyes glassy. I'd like that. I finished my coffee, stood up, and offered a hand. She took it. Her grip was unsure, but real. No more bravado, no armor. Just a girl learning how to say sorry and mean it. As I walked back to my car, I didn't feel healed. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, in that deep, soul-level way you feel after finally letting go of something you've been carrying for too long. But I also felt something else, hope, not for reconciliation, but for evolution. Maybe she'd grow from this. Maybe she'd be better than the version of herself I used to know. And maybe that was enough. 6 months had passed since that day in the coffee shop. Enough time for the seasons to change, for the leaves to dry out and fall, for the wind to take on that edge that makes you reach for a heavier coat. Enough time for me to build a new life, one brick at a time, with careful, steady hands. There was no dramatic transformation, no sudden shift in identity. Just small decisions, day after day, that led me further from who I was and closer to who I was always meant to be. And every morning, when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who finally made peace with the man staring back. I had moved into a 2-bedroom condo on the quieter side of town. Nothing flashy, but it had character. Exposed brick in the kitchen, big windows that let in morning light, and just enough room to breathe. I filled the space with things I actually liked. A dark green sofa, a record player I found at an estate sale, shelves lined with novels I'd been meaning to read for years. I cooked for myself, not because anyone expected it, but because I enjoyed it. I took walks, picked up a hobby, photography, of all things, and learned how to spend time with myself without feeling like something was missing. People asked questions, of course. The guys at work tiptoed around the subject at first, but eventually the curiosity broke through. So, you really just left? One asked. Just like that. I never went into the full story. I'd shrug and say something like, it wasn't working out, or I needed a reset. But inside, I carried the whole story like a tattoo under my skin, visible only to me, permanent in a way no ring ever was. Julia didn't reach out again after the day she came to my office. Not directly. I heard through a mutual friend that she and Tessa were living in a small rental now, scraping by. Julia had picked up a second job, and Tessa was slowly getting her act together, going to therapy, attending night school, trying to course correct. I didn't feel bitterness when I heard those things. Just distance. Like I was watching an old show I'd once been part of but no longer felt connected to. My role had ended. The credits had rolled, and I'd walked off the set. Tessa did send the occasional message. Never too long. Never asking for anything. Just a check-in, a thought, a link to something she thought I'd like. I didn't always respond, but I read every one. They felt sincere, earnest, and I wanted her to have that space to keep growing on her own terms. I didn't need to be a guide or a savior, just someone who, at one point, showed her a different way to be. I started dating again, cautiously at first, not because I was scared, but because I wanted to get it right. I met a woman named Lauren at a photography workshop. Smart, sarcastic, quick with a smile but slow to reveal her own scars. We took it slow. We had long conversations about our pasts, about what we'd lost, and what we were still learning to want. With her, I never felt like I had to explain why I left. She understood the cost of silence, of staying in places where your value was up for debate. One night, a few months into seeing each other, Lauren asked me if I regretted walking away. We were sitting on my balcony, watching the city hum beneath us, the remnants of dinner still warm on our plates. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. No, I said finally. Not for a second. Because I didn't. I regretted the years I stayed silent. I regretted the moments I let slide, the parts of myself I trimmed down just to fit into a life that was never designed with me in mind. But the leaving? That was the most honest thing I ever did. There's this thing that happens when you stop begging for love. You start recognizing what real love actually feels like. It doesn't humiliate you. It doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't leave you standing in the kitchen alone while someone else shrugs off your pain like a minor inconvenience. Real love listens. It speaks up when someone disrespects you. It pulls you closer instead of stepping back. I used to think that family was something you had to cling to no matter what. That blood, or marriage, or shared history meant you were obligated to suffer through anything. But I've learned that family is just another word for people you choose to build a life with. And sometimes, you outgrow the version of family you started with. Sometimes, walking away is the kindest thing you can do for them and for yourself. One Sunday morning, I found the old ring box tucked in the back of a drawer I hadn't opened in months. I'd forgotten I had even brought it with me. I opened it, looked at the smooth curve of silver inside, and felt nothing. No anger, no grief, just a kind of quiet reverence for the man who had the strength to set it down and walk away. I closed the box, dropped it in a donation bin later that day, and didn't look back. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, toothbrush in hand, and really looked at myself. The lines around my eyes were deeper now, and there was more gray at my temples than I remembered. But my eyes? They were clear, steady, free. I nodded at my reflection, and for the first time in a long, long time, I said out loud, "Good job." Because I meant it. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life tales of resilience, boundaries, and emotional growth. Your support helps us bring you even more powerful narratives every day. See you soon in the next one.